It was a moment of untested bravado. It was, yeah, Nanny, that's right. We just kill people. That statement wouldn't come back to haunt me until 2003. My dad calls and he's like, Dave's been in a crash. He's in the hospital, but he's okay. Like all those emotions that I'd been able to keep down and keep hidden all came out at once. I tried to feel relief that he was okay, but I couldn't. It was overwhelming grief that hit me instead, as if he were dead.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe. My name is Juan Cephas from Fit PD, and this is Lineup with Fit PD. I was a peace officer for 30 years almost, and I retired as a police sergeant. During that same time period, I had a second job. My second job was teaching at the police academy, variety of different topics, including use of force and defensive tactics. I still have that job. And I've been doing that job for over 23 years. During that time period, I have met some amazing people. Amazing people in law enforcement that I think all our subscribers need to hear their stories. Today's guest has a story that's built on grit, as well as the dedication to protect others. He was a United States Marine Corps pilot that served 2 tours in Iraq. His first tour was as a Cobra helicopter pilot. His second tour was as a forward air controller for special operations. He provided the guidance to keep troops safe during the chaos of battle. His family lineage is deep-rooted in aviation. His grandfather, his father, uncle, brother, all aviators. But our guest did not join the Marine Corps to continue that tradition. He joined the Marine Corps, in his words, to start a journey, a transition between who he was and who he wanted to be. After the Marine Corps, he became a deputy sheriff, where he wanted to protect and serve his community, using the same exact lessons he learned as a pilot, as a Marine, to keep people safe and to serve. He's here today, and he's got a lot to offer. He's got a lot to offer law enforcement. He's an author of a couple of books that really talk about wellness as a warrior. He shares his personal stories on how to make it home even after a victory, because many of us have silent scars that we need to work on. And our guest, not only was he a resource to the military, but he really is a resource to San Diego law enforcement. And I'm very, very proud and happy to have him here with us. Please help me welcome Dan Sheehan.
Thank you, Juan. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure. Really, thank you for inviting me. I love what you're doing with the show, and it's just an honor to be part of it. So,
well, thank you, Dan. I think I've mentioned this to you before, but there's certain people that I meet in my career that, I feel like, that person, if I had a podcast, that person should be on the podcast. And I've been blessed to have this podcast, and here I am, and here you are. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Dan, I mentioned this quote, and I hope I didn't mess it up, on your journey, your transition to becoming a Marine, where you talked about changing the person that you were to the person that you wanted to be. And I kind of want to start there a little bit. I want to hear about who you were and who you wanted to become.
Sure. Well, like a lot of folks, I mean, my dad was a primary role model for me. And, my father was a naval aviator. He flew with Val 4, an OV-10 squadron in Vietnam. And that was well before I was born. But I knew that his experiences in the Navy and aviation, but also in combat, had changed him some way and had made him who I knew as my father. And when it came time for me to make those sorts of decisions, say, what am I going to do with my life? What direction do I want to go in? I sought that same transition. I sought the transition between, my kind of self-perception as a boy and where I wanted to be as a man. And my father was the primary role model for that. And so I sought the same challenges that he had experienced. In my mind, what I thought he had experienced, I wanted to experience as well for that transformative effect. And so that did set me on that trajectory, on that path. My dad was in the Navy. I ended up going to the Marine Corps because I had zero confidence that I could actually make it through flight school. And so if I didn't make it through flight school, I didn't really want to be on a ship. I'd rather be doing something in the Marine Corps. So I went that route.
That sounds like a good strategy.
I hedged my bets. Let's just say that.
Now, Dan, tell us a little bit about who that boy was.
Good question. When you look back at yourself as a boy, I don't think I've been asked that before. So I would have to say I wanted challenges. I sought challenges, but I wasn't tested. I didn't know what I could do. I had done some work as in the White Mountains in New Hampshire as a trail crew worker. And that was, kind of summertime employment, but it remains, even after all the stuff I've done since, it remains the most physically demanding job I've ever had. Wow. And it showed me at age 18, 19, just what I could do if I worked hard at it. And I mean, I'm glad that job only lasted like 4 years because I probably would have destroyed myself. But it was a great experience, and it was a great thing for me to learn at that young age that I didn't have any physical limitations. I could do things that I didn't think possible because the trail crew involved, it was hand tools, moving heavy rocks, building staircases in the White Mountains in New Hampshire. It's not for the faint of heart. And, it was tough. But it was a good proving ground, and nothing that I went through after that reached that same level of requiring the same mental fortitude to push through it. Because when you're doing work like that, there's nobody within 5 miles of you on the trail. If you're going to go and get a crappy little rock and put it into this as this base step because it's easy to move and it's going to be destroyed in 2 years, hey, there's nobody there to tell you not to do it. But if you spend 3 days moving this heavy ass boulder over into the middle of the trail and set it as a good base step that you can then put 15 or 20 more steps on top of to get up this ridge, that only comes from inside of you. And you have to decide to make that choice and to put yourself through it because it's the right thing to do. So that was kind of the initial seeking of challenges.
Okay.
And then when I started looking at, okay, I'm not going to build trails for the rest of my life. So what am I going to do? Like, I want to fly, but I want to fly in the Marine Corps. And I want to fly, I settled on helicopter. I settled on gunships later on because the Cobra community had a reputation for eating its young. So it's like you come in there, and if you don't meet standards, then you're going to get just crushed. And you're not going to have a good career. You're going to get sidelined and pushed away. And I wanted that challenge. And I wanted to get in there and to prove that I belonged there, and then carry that forward. And there are other aviation communities that don't have that same kind of, it's a cutthroat environment, or was a very cutthroat environment. Speaking from, I've been out for long enough now that for longer than I was in. So, it may have changed a little bit, but gunships are gunships, and Marines are Marines. So I have no doubt that the skid pilots on active duty today are just as brutally honest with each other and demanding of competence and warfighting capability that we were back in our time.
Well, it's almost like it's necessary.
It is. There's no room for somebody who's a dead weight in the ready room. You've got to have that.
If you have that, it could cost lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that mentality is something that's needed when it comes to like military personnel working in specialized units, also for first responders and peace officers. So it sounds to me like you had a foundation in New Hampshire.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're on a 4-person crew, and if one person isn't able to do the job or isn't willing to do the job, then the entire crew suffers, and you're not going to get the work done that needs to get done. And it's, are people going to die? No, but the job, you're there to do the job, and you take pride in doing the job well and building rock staircases, building trails that are going to last through New England winters for 20, 30, 40 years. That's what you want. You want to put that rock that's not going to move through all those freeze-thaw cycles. So that's why you move the big ones, to use that. And so, yeah, I think that translates. That's a good lesson learned early on, is that everybody carries their weight or the entire team suffers.
Now, you arrive in boot camp. Where'd you go to boot camp?
So I went to Officer Candidate School down in Quantico, Virginia.
Okay.
So OCS down in Quantico went a couple different times. So I was both in ROTC and in the platoon leaders class program. So 2 6-week OCS periods down in Quantico.
And how was that when you arrived the first time?
It was you take the first, let's say, 12 hours of the academy and stretch it over 6 weeks. And that's pretty much what it was. It was, you get there and it's all, okay, admin in processing. There are drill instructors around you, but they're not yours.
They're not engaging yet.
You're not theirs. They're just going through the admin stuff. And then you sit in this big ready room or this big auditorium, all these guys with freshly shorn heads, and you don't even have uniforms yet. You just got a sea bag full of stuff that they've given you. And then the commanding officer gets up there on the stage and invites the staff out. The staff comes out. He goes name by name, introduces them, and then says, carry out the plan of the day. And the fucking world ends. It's just they're leaping over tables. There's chairs flopping through. You're screamed at. And it just goes on from there. It just becomes a blur at that point, and eventually it settles in. But eventually, yeah. At about week 4, you start to figure out where you're at, where you are, and what you need to do to survive.
What were some of your top challenges, physically, mentally, or otherwise, going through the program?
I got there in good physical shape. That was something that, if there's one thing you can do to prep yourself, it's be in good physical shape, so that when they start trying to smoke you, you can be like, okay, yeah, I'm getting smoked, but you're really not. And you can hold that in reserve, and that's your rest time. When everybody else is hanging out and is losing and is questioning their life choices, you can be in that mental place where you're like, yeah, this is fine. I can do flutter kicks for another 20 minutes, no problem. And so having that was helpful. That gave me some respite. I don't really recall anything being, so taxing that I was like, I can't do this. So, you learn everything, and even that carried forward into flight school. There were a lot of challenging things to learn, but it was all broken down very Barney style.
Okay.
It was like the military flight program, especially the naval aviation, is set up so that you can teach a motivated monkey how to fly. You can do that. They've proven it. We've got examples right here. Okay. So the information is there. It requires a lot of work, a lot of memorization, and a lot of rote memorization and being able to spit information out under stress in order to do these things. But you're capable of doing it. It takes work. And so I would think that the first time that I questioned my ability to actually succeed in my chosen path was there were two flights that did that for me. One was the first one where the first time I tried to take off in the T-34, which is a little fixed wing turboprop. You sometimes see them flying up and down the coast here. My instructor explained exactly what I needed to do. We were at the hold short, and the whole runway's in front of me, and he's in I forget which seat I was in. I must have been in the back seat. Regardless, I'm in the cockpit, and sitting there, he talks through everything I need to do, and he asks me to repeat. Okay, now that I've told you, tell me everything you need to do to take off. And I went through everything I needed to do, every step. Got it. And then he's like, okay, you got controls. I have controls. And so I added power, and I immediately did everything wrong. Like I didn't add the correct rudder pedal to counteract the torque from the prop. I started going off the runway twice. He had to grab the controls and bring us back on. It's like, holy shit! And then I used up the entire runway. This bird could have gotten off the ground in a quarter of the runway. I used up the entire runway, not being able to get it off the ground. We had to back taxi all the way back down to the starting line. Try it again. Second time we got off the ground, but it still wasn't pretty. But at that first flight, I was like, man, I am never going to be able to do this. This is just too much. I can memorize everything, but I can't execute. And over the next, weeks and months, everything got easier and easier, step by step. And at the end of I think it was about 15, I think you do about 15 flights before you solo.
Okay.
And then I was soloing. I was flying the damn thing by myself. I was like, okay, I can do this. And then let's fast forward through intermediate flight training, doing a bunch of other stuff, and then going back and now learning how to fly helicopters.
Oh.
I was like, hey, I've got 100-something hours of fixed wing time. This is great. I'm gonna pick this up. Great, let's go fly some helicopters. Get in the bird the first time, and the instructor takes us off, and we're flying over to a big outlying field. It's about a mile square, just grass, flat grass. There's nothing there. And he puts it down on this little pad in the middle, and we talk about the controls, what the controls do. And he picks it up into a hover, nice and steady, tree on the horizon. We're just sitting there. And he's like, all right, go ahead and take the cyclic. So I take the cyclic, one of the 4 controls I need to maneuver. I'm like, okay, this is good. I'm holding the bird steady, not too shabby. He's like, all right, I got the cyclic. You take the collective. I'm like, okay, take the collective. He's like, all right, go up a little bit. So pull up, you go up, push down, go down. All right, this is pretty simple. Cyclic is push forward, go forward, back. And then he's like, okay, take the pedals. Like, I got the pedals. So I use the pedals and do a little pedal turn this way, that way, and looking left and right. Like, okay, this piece of cake. Let's get it going. All right, I'm ready for gunships. And then he goes, all right, now you know how all these controls work, right? Okay. Now you have controls. I'm like, Roger, I have controls. All right. Take the controls, and for about 2.5 seconds, that aircraft is stable. And I'm like, fuck, yeah, I got this now. And then everything goes haywire. I make a little correction on the collective. Next thing I know, I'm turning left. I'm trying to step on the pedal right. I turn into an absolute bucking bronco in the middle of the field. The instructor's just sitting there. Giant brass ones. He's just sitting there looking at me. Anytime you want to settle it out, go ahead. I'm like, oh dear God, I don't know what I'm doing. And so after that, it got better. Every flight got a little bit better, but it's humbling at every step of the way. When you think you know, and you think you're walking in with things figured out, and then you prove to yourself that you don't.
Right.
You have to take a step back and go, all right, what do I need to do to make this happen now? This isn't going to come easy. This isn't going to come without work. So where do I need to put the work in order to make this what I want it to be? And those were good, valuable lessons to learn. And, luckily I got those lessons early on in my career. And then just apply them throughout their life lessons. They're, as you saw me at the academy. I was still, okay, this is a new step, new direction, and I got stuff to figure out. So I'm going to figure it out, and I'll put in the work where I need to put in the work in order to be competent.
Well, and that's part of the resilience. If you, starting for you in New Hampshire, if you give up bringing in those big rocks, then you're not building the resilience needed to be able to get through flight school, to get through an academy, to get through all the obstacles that you encountered in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just baby steps. That's the beautiful thing about resilience. As long as you don't give up and you find a way, you should be okay.
Yeah. You never lose as long as you haven't given up.
That's right. So now, Dan, at some point you earn your wings. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Man, that was a day. That was just a day that I'll never forget. 2.5 years of flight school, and years before that of setting this as a goal. And it's held out in front of you throughout all your training. If you make it, you get these gold wings. And that there's always that if is a big if, because there's plenty of folks who don't make it.
What's the percentage, more or less?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I just know that a lot of the guys I started with weren't there at the end.
All right.
And that's the way it is. It's not a good or bad thing. It's just that there's it's a tough program. But no, my family came in, flew in for that, and my father actually pinned my wings on my chest.
Oh.
And the wings that he pinned on my chest weren't the ones that they give out. These were a family heirloom that my grandmother, who was a wave in World War II.
Okay.
So women accepted for voluntary emergency service, waves, yeah, in World War II. So she was in the Navy, and she met my grandfather in the Navy. My grandfather was a pilot, and at some point, she bought him a pair of gold wings, literally gold wings,
Gold.
and had engraved on the back DBS and his winging date. And then when my father earned his wings of gold in 1968 or 9, just before he went to Vietnam, Poppy put those wings on my dad's chest, and my dad's winging date was put on the back of those. And so DBS Junior. And then so Dad pinned those same wings on my chest, DBS 3, with my winging date, and I kept those wings for probably about 7 years, until my younger brother got his wings, and my dad pinned those wings on his chest. So all 4 of our winging dates are engraved on the back of that one set of gold wings. So that was a special day.
It sounds like a special day. One that stands out for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Now, in your books, I read a little bit about during that ceremony, your grandma leans over to you and it makes a comment about the type of helicopter you're going to be flying. Can you share a little bit of that with us, please?
Yeah. So we were sitting there in the auditorium, and before the winging ceremony, they put up like a little motivational video that shows all of the aircraft in the Marine Corps inventory. Well, for us, we were all going rotary wing, so it was all the different helicopters in the Marine Corps. So Cobra's shooting, 53's carrying stuff, Huey's carrying guys spy rigging out of the back or underneath, and 46's doing 46 stuff. So all that was going on, and motivational music and everything else. And yeah, at one point, Nanny just I told her that's mine. That's what I'm going to fly when a Cobra came up. And it was the stereotypical Cobra scene where there's like a bunch of trees out, and then this just snake pops up over top of the trees full of ordnance underneath and just starts going to town. And Nanny kind of looks over at me and goes, "Your helicopter doesn't save people, does it?" I said, No, Nanny, it doesn't. And it was that moment of it was a bravado moment. It was, and in my mind it was like, no, we kill people and we blow up their stuff, and that's Literally, that's all a gunship does. That's what our mission is. And I was parroting what I'd been told and what I knew that job to be like, but I had no understanding of what that was. So it was a moment of untested bravado. It was, yeah, Nanny, that's right. We just kill people. And that statement wouldn't come back to haunt me really until after 2003, during the invasion phase when I was actually killing people. It's like, this is what that means. This is what that statement I so callously threw out, so ignorantly, not callous, ignorantly, because I didn't understand what it meant and what it would mean to me. And yeah, it came back at that point. It was like, this is what I signed up for. And it's not a good feeling. I don't like this. But
so now this is your first tour.
Yeah.
And you're a Cobra pilot.
First combat tour. So I'd been on two Western Pacific deployments before that. So I'd been deployed for a year on amphibious shipping. Almost got into a couple of gunfights in Yemen and East Timor, but nothing popped up. So yeah, I had when the invasion started in 2003, I had about 1,200 flight hours. I was a division leader, FAC-A, and had a lot of experience in the Cobra. Wouldn't say a lot. I had a good amount of experience. I was comfortable in the aircraft, and I knew my job, and I knew how to interact with the greater warfighting machinery where my place was within it. So I reference that because my father's experience was quite different. He came out of flight school. He got 25 hours in the OV-10, and then he was in combat. So my dad went to combat with 25 hours in his combat aircraft. I went to combat with 1,200 hours in mine. And there are different experiences that come from that level of knowledge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just comfort level alone.
Yeah.
In your piece of equipment. So now when you experienced your first combat mission, can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, so my squadron was HMLA 267, the Stingers, and we were tasked with taking out the Iraqi eyes and ears along a stretch of the border between Iraq and Kuwait. So at this point, Saddam's still in power. We've got several 100,000 troops in the Kuwaiti desert, all prepping to go north. Our job my squadron's job was to take out 5 Iraqi border posts that were in positions that could call artillery in on the breach points. So there's a big berm on the border, and it was going to slow our troops down getting across that berm because they have to blow it open, minefields and the rest. So they're going to be slow in there, and they're going to be channelized. So the biggest threat for them was that the Iraqis would see those points where they're going to go and mass artillery fire on them. And so we'd have a lot of casualties. So our job was just before the troops made the way to the border, we were to kill everybody on the 5 border posts that were in this probably 70-mile stretch of border so that we would take out their eyes and ears. We prepped for that for about 2 weeks. We did walkthroughs. We did rehearsal flights. Mm-hmm. Everything was timed out to the gnat's ass. We're going to hit this checkpoint at this time, at this moment. Here's the time when the ground troops are going to go across. So let's say that's T. At T minus 2 minutes, we're going to be sweeping up those, we're going to be killing everybody basically on those targets with 50 cal and 7.62 from the Hueys and 20 millimeter from the Cobras. At T minus 2, we're going to have tow missiles impacting those sites. At T minus 3, we're going to have Hellfire missiles impacting those sites. So as we get closer and closer, we're going to engage from farther away so that our missiles are already impacting at the precision moment, so that when we get closer for more precise targeting, they're already decimated, so they're not going to be shooting back at us.
Right.
And so we build safety into our plan by using standoff and killing them by farther away. So that was the plan. And we planned for it. We had everything timed out. Everything was great. It was all according to plan. And then morning of, we're supposed to go at 2200 that night. That was when the hit was supposed to go down. Mid-morning, everybody's just kind of sitting around. We're like, okay, here it comes. You know, tonight's the night. Trying not to get too excited, but just stay ready. And Saddam starts firing missiles into Kuwait. And so we get code reds, alert reds, and we get everybody in their MOP 4 gear because chemical weapons were a concern. So we're in full chemical weapons gear. We're hunkering in these bunkers. These were the same bunkers that had been blown up during the first Gulf War. Oh. We blew them up with bunker busters. And so they're these giant, like, flat-topped pyramid things that are just, their concrete is probably 3 feet thick. And in the middle of the top of each one of those was a giant hole with all the rebar blown in, because that's where we had destroyed it during the Gulf War, first Gulf War. So we were using those as our hardened aircraft shelters and as our protection. So I remember at this point, we've been in there for a while waiting for these missiles, and I'm just laying on my back looking up through this open hole in the roof. Like, oh, shit, what are the chances? What are the chances it's going to come through that? We started hearing some booms in the distance, and I remember going, all right, are these chemical weapons now? Are we in a gas situation? Because we're all sitting there in our gas masks and everything. We wouldn't know if there was gas. So I was just watching these sparrows flying around. It's like, as long as those sparrows are flying, we're good. And sparrows kept flying and doing their thing. So eventually all clear sounded, and we got out of there and started going, okay, so that's that. Now it's like lunchtime. So what are we going to do for the rest of the day? The alarms start going off again. And about the same time that we're trying to decide whether we're going to run to the shelters, gas mask up again and get in the shelters, the CO comes screaming in. CO's got his own vehicle. Comes screaming into the parking lot, slams it, gets out, runs into the ready room. We're like, all right, something's up. So we kind of converge on the ready room. Our ready room is a tent. We're all living outside. Okay. This is a tent area. And CO just busts out, CO and XO. It's like, there is no TOT. There is no time on target.
Okay.
Go. Everybody just fucking drops whatever they've got. It's like a mile to the aircraft. Everybody's sprinting to the aircraft. Get there, and there's no TOT. There's no timeline anymore. Go. And that's because we had done so much training and so much prep. That's all he had. That word was all he had to say. Go. And 15 aircraft, 16 with because one of the divisions had an extra. So 16 aircraft spark up on their own timelines now. As soon as they can get going, all the crews get their birds, take off, hit their rally points, and then start heading in towards their separate targets. The atmospheric conditions were dog shit weather. We wouldn't have flown in that. There was a lot of smoke coming out from the oil fires. So there's no horizon. It's falling. It's getting into night, but it's also, there's the limited sunlight that's still available is pretty much gone from both the dust storm and from the smoke, and just black oil smoke. And we hit I'm in the front seat of the Cobra. Gash, my co-pilot's in the back seat, and we hit our first checkpoint basically, where I know I'd say we're probably at 6,000 meters. I should be firing my first Hellfire. And I'm heads down in the bucket. So in the front seat, the Cobra, you have a bucket, some basically that the gunner sticks his head in and can see out through the nose using the sighting system. So I was using the direct view optics are the best thing that we had in there, but with the visibility the way it was, I couldn't see anything. So I'm using the FLIR, and our FLIR was it was cutting edge 1970s technology, and so it was not good. And so I'm looking into gray soup, and I'm like, Gash knows the timeline just as well as I do. He can see the distance to target ticking down. He's like, dude, are you going to shoot or not? was like, I can't see anything. I can't see it. He's like, all right. So we just push in. We're pushing in. As we push in, we're getting closer.
Right.
And they're going to be able to shoot back at us. There's no question what's going on at this point. So we're just pushing in, and we fly at about 50 feet off the ground. Push any higher than that, and we're in danger of getting picked up by radar-guided munitions and missiles. We go lower than that, we're going to hit the power lines of the dunes. So we're about 50 feet is where we were comfortable flying in towards these targets. And 6,000 meters comes and goes. About 5,000 meters comes and goes. 4,000. I'm like, Gash is getting pissed at me. I'm like, dude, I can't see. I can't shoot it if I can't see it. Finally, I see like a wiggly line. And then I figure out, okay, from that wiggly line, that must be the road. And here's a little hot spot. That hot spot is south of the road, so it must be the UN portion. So if I look north, I should see another hot spot, and that'll be the Iraqi portion. And I'm like, okay, and I figure all that out, go from the UN post, go north, find another hot spot. I'm like, I got it. Flip up my, tell Gash, actually Gash was already master arm. So I went hot on the Hellfire, I put my laser out and fired a Hellfire missile. A Hellfire missile uses reflected laser energy. So you point a laser at something with a certain code to its pulse, and then you code that missile to look for that same pulse, and then you fire the missile. It takes off, it goes up in a preset climb, and then at a certain moment, it'll start looking down with its seeker head and look for the reflected energy. Oh. That keeps it away from the aperture of the Cobra when you fire. Okay. So boom, goes up, and also gives you standoff over mountains and things. So my first missile goes up, and the laser energy, because of the atmospherics, the laser energy wasn't reflecting off of the target. It was just getting absorbed into the dust and all the crap in the air. So that missile just went away. And I was like, oh shit, I just shot a missile somewhere into Iraq. All right, I guess we're at war now. I guess that's what it is. And so I realized what had happened, switched over to TOW, which was an optically guided missile. Okay. So it comes out of the tube, and then there's two wires that run it back to the aircraft. They spool out behind it, kind of like taser wires. Okay. And it looks at the missile, basically cuts across the sighting unit in front of the Cobra, and it reads where my crosshairs are. So it's trying to put the xenon beakers on the back side of the missile, trying to put it in my crosshairs. Okay. So it's going to correct itself as it goes across and get to where I'm going, or get to where I want it to go. And so minimum distance on that, really inside of 1,000 meters, that's really tight. Okay. We were probably at about 500 meters when I could actually see well enough to get this missile off. Just firing, and I sent one off. It kind of loops around and arcs in front of the bird, catches where it's supposed to be, and then corrects back. Well, this missile didn't even correct once. It just came through my line of sight and impacted. So we were that close. That explosion blew out the building I was going for. Gash could then see from the back seat. He could see where he was supposed to be shooting, because he doesn't have any sights in the back. And so he started, our 20 millimeter was broken, which was traditional throughout this fight for me. It was like my 20 was always jammed. So Gash went in with rockets, and unguided 2.75 inch flechette and high explosive rockets. And a flechette rocket, at about 800 meters, it separates into 2,200 steel nails. Okay. And that will beat up basically a football field. It'll just inundate it with these darts. Super effective against troops in the open and whatnot, and light-skinned vehicles. So actually, we weren't shooting those. We were just high explosive rockets. So Gash fires those. We pull off, and we do 2 attacks. So we're dash. I'm sorry. So we were dash 2. I forget which section we were in that attack, but it was just a lead had already come back around to shoot again. We did 2 runs and then pulled off, and then the Huey was our dash 3, and they came in, and we always used to make fun of the Hueys because they were slow and fat. They were the fat kids. But that day I learned to love the Huey, and I've loved them ever since, because they've got 2 meat-eating corporals or lance corporals in the backs of those birds behind a 50 cal or a gal just going to town. And it's nothing better than a Marine behind a 50 or a minigun. And I just remember seeing their rounds going ricocheting off of everything. And I knew, because I was cold to the target now. I was pulling off, so I couldn't engage anything behind me.
Right.
So I needed my partner to cover my back, and the Huey was right there covering. So the Huey kept them. Whoever was still alive on the target was more occupied by the 6,000 rounds of 7.62 that was impacting their position than trying to get a shot up my tailpipe. And so that was our first flight. That was our first fight. We crossed back over the border, and we're jinking and trying to make ourselves a hard target. And Gash is flying so low, we go across the berm. The friendly troops are now breaching the berm behind us, coming up, and I'm eye to eye with a LAV commander. Like, he's in the turret of his light armored vehicle, and I'm eye to eye with him as we go past. And it's like, hey. So we were pretty low, but we get back to a FARP site in northern Kuwait. FARP stands for Forward Arming and Refueling Point.
Okay.
So basically a strip of highway in the desert that had stacks of ordnance and fuel trucks ready for us.
Okay.
So we didn't go back to our airfield in Kuwait because we expected retaliatory strikes against the airfield. So we dispersed our birds out in the desert. We landed at this FARP called Astrodome FARP. And we just get the birds down. So this hit was supposed to go at night. So we all had our goggles, but my goggles were in the tail boom of the bird because I didn't think that I was going to be flying day into night. By the time we got to landing, like, it was almost pitch black. So we're landing, we got our birds down quick, and which is good because, like I said, the visibility's crap to begin with. My goggles are gone. I can't reach them because they're in the back of the bird. So that's where I left them. And so Gash gets the bird down. We set it down, shut it down. We're like, all right, whew, hey, first combat mission. We're done. We made it. We're safe. And then the rest of the birds try to come in and land. And I think the closest I actually came to dying that night was when another Cobra, probably about 40 minutes after we landed, so it's pitch black now. Yeah. Another Cobra starts coming in to set up to land at where the FARP is. Can't see that he's trying to land on top of my bird. So my bird is down there. I see this guy. I hear the engines spooling up. I can just see a blacker section of night where the helicopter was. I was like, he's trying to land on my bird. He doesn't see it. And I ran back it's one of those moments you have that decision to make. It's like, do I dive for cover now, or do I try to avoid this calamity? I was like, I got to try to avoid this. So I have this stupid little angle lens flashlight, the POS flashlight, and I run back to my aircraft, and I just have this light up, and I'm standing on my bird, waving this up at the Cobra, screaming obscenities at it, and it gets low enough that I'm like, oh shit. And just kind of cringing because I'm just waiting for the meshing of blades impact and everything to go. And then the pitch on the engines change, and he sees it, noses over, and goes away. Swings back around, lands at a different part of the FARP. So disaster averted, go on with the day. But it was like, I still don't know who that was. I have no idea. But yeah, that was day one.
Day one.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were many more similar type days, but I'd like for you to share your second tour. You come back as a special operations forward air controller.
Sure.
And what's that role like?
Yeah. So as a forward air controller or a FAC, my job is to control the terminal fires of aircraft around my unit. So
ground unit.
Yeah. So I did my tour during the invasion, came home. Our squadron, 267, got sent home early after major combat operations were done in May. We were the first squadron kind of rotate out because they had follow-on orders to go to Okinawa.
Okay.
So I was back home May, June timeframe of 2003, and then did a couple of flights waiting for the squadron that I was going to go to come back from Okinawa. When just before they got back, or about that same time, I heard that there was a Marine Special Operations unit that was standing up, a new unit that was standing up. And one of the Cobra pilots that I had flown with and worked with previously, Tom Dolan, was the air officer for that unit. There were only 85 Marines in that unit. It was set up as a proof of concept under direction of Defense Secretary Rumsfeld.
Okay.
And so he wanted the Marines to become part of SOCOM. We didn't have a dedicated Marine Special Operations unit before that. We had Marines that were serving in Special Operations capacities, and we had our Force Recon unit, but the Force Recon was still owned by the Marine Corps. So what Rumsfeld wanted was a Marine unit that would go and be owned by SOCOM and would provide Marine specific skills to SOCOM.
Okay.
And so our unit was the proof of concept. MC SOCOM Det 1 was the proof of concept unit for that idea. So it started out with 85 Marines under Colonel Coates, and he figured out pretty quick that with what they were going to be tasked with, they needed a couple more people. So I think we got up to 105 before our first deployment, but I was one of those kind of second guys brought on when they realized they needed more than one FAC to be able to dual site and even triple site. They had to have more forward air controllers who were available than just one. So I knew Tom from before. He set up an interview of sorts for me with the XO, Colonel Kaczynski, and then the boss. Went over there and interviewed and got brought in pretty quickly after that. And that was about 9 months of that kicked off about 9 months of pretty intense training for the unit. So we went from nothing, from not even having a flagpole, to being in combat in about 9 months. And it was amazing. It was a great team to be part of. Everybody that was there was handpicked by Colonel Coates, and he knew the guys that he wanted, and he stacked that unit with all the people that it was his dream team.
Okay.
So I felt very, very lucky to be part of that and to work with such professionals. My job was to carry a big old radio around and to be where I can best control any aircraft that's there to support us. So whether fixed wing, rotary wing, UAVs, I needed to be with, generally speaking, on most of our direct hits, I was with the raid force going into the house or going into the target. Some of those raids, I would be on an overwatch position. So maybe climb the building with the snipers next door before the hit goes down on that position. But generally speaking, in the urban environment where we did most of our missions, my job was to be in the stack, get through the house. As soon as we blow the door down, the team, I'm in the back of the stack. The gunfighters are going in first. They're clearing, and I'm getting up to the roof. Once I get up to the roof, I'm reestablishing comms with my aircraft, and now I'm on more of an isolation position. I'm up there using the aircraft's eyes to see who's trying to come close to us.
Okay.
Who's trying to who hears the explosions and is running towards us, because that's not good.
Right.
So especially downtown Baghdad at 2 a.m. If people that are coming towards you when there are explosions, they got other thoughts in their mind than just seeing if you're okay. So yeah, my job was to be that comm piece between the aircraft and the ground. So from a reconnaissance standpoint, I'm feeding info that the aircraft are giving me. I'm feeding it out over our tactical radio to the guys. So I've got several different radios going at once. In the event that we need to shoot, then I'm directing the fires from that aircraft so that they're not hitting me or any of our guys. So I know where my snipers are located. So if I hear an aircraft say, hey, I got heat sources on a building in this quadrant, this sector, this building, negative, those are friendlies, got it. And then they'll move on. Or conversely, if I know that there aren't and they got heat sources, they got somebody laying down looking through a scope, looking through something, it's like, okay, well, let's go ahead and take that out. So I'll handle that. That's all the urban stuff. It gets very close quarters during the urban fight. So I was lucky that we had a lot of being with SOCOM and a task unit under the SEAL commander that was there. We had access to all the good toys. So I constantly had an AC-130 overhead. Oh. And there's nothing better than having an AC-130 in an orbit over top of you that can drop a 105 millimeter howitzer wherever you want it. And those guys were great. So it was an exciting job to have. It was made all the safer. It sounds like it could be a dangerous job, but I felt safer on the ground around those 50 guys that would be on a hit than I ever did in the cockpit. And it's because like I knew in the cockpit, it's just me and Gash. He's 5 feet away from me, separated by a big console. He can't get to me. If I get hit, if I can't stop the bleeding, I'm going to die before we get to where we need to go. I'm going to bleed out. And it's like, this is before everybody had a tourniquet even. So like we did tourniquets were like, okay, yeah, docs have those. No, this was, kind of funny to think about it that way now. But on the ground, I was in the midst of 50 of the toughest gunfighters ever. And our corpsmen were they would beat any trauma doc anywhere. These guys, if I survived the initial explosion or the initial hit, I had no doubt these guys would keep me alive to get me to help. So I felt a lot more secure sneaking up on a house at 3 a.m. in the middle of Sadr City than I did, flying over Baghdad. Well, certainly over Baghdad. So yeah, it was 2 different wars. It felt like two different wars for me. And it was only when I started going through this and writing about it afterwards that I recognized the differences between those 2 tours. And really what they boiled down to was the enemy combatants, the people we were fighting. During the invasion, this was the Iraqi army. Okay. Uniformed troops, and to a lesser extent, but actually more of the guys that actually fought were the irregular troops, the Saddam Fedayeen. A lot of these guys, a lot of the regular troops they were draftees. These were just kids that got stuck in a hole somewhere, said, here's an AK, face that direction, shoot anybody that comes up. These guys they had no reason to be there other than the fact that if they didn't go, they were probably they could get killed for not serving when they were told to. And those were a lot of the people that I killed in the first couple of days. And I went into that wanting to feel some measure of threat from the people that I engaged. And yes, that threat was there, but I wanted to feel more in danger than I did before killing them, if that makes sense. I wanted them to deserve it. And I had a hard time believing that, these guys that because I've got the optics in the front. I'm looking through basically a sniper scope, 13 times the magnification. I know snipers have much better, but that's what I had in mind. And I could see these guys from a distance, and I'm watching them. And I kind of write about those guys one morning. They're sitting there having tea in a fighting hole in the middle of the desert. There's nothing around them, and we're talking about we're about 2 clicks away in an orbit, all 4 birds. Like, all right, we got these 4 guys in this hole. What are we gonna do? Like, They're Iraqis, definitely. They're Iraqi soldiers, definitely uniforms. They got AKs. Yeah, we can see them in the hole, sitting on the side of the fighting hole. One guy had his slung. They're having tea. They're watching us. They're looking at us. I could see them looking at me, and because we're loud, we're low. They can see us for sure. And we're like, what do we do? Do we just kill these guys? They're not. Are they just waiting for the first ground units? Because remember, we're ahead of all the ground units.
Right.
So who are they going to surrender to? If these guys really want to fight, then they would be shooting at us. They don't really want to fight because they're not shooting at us. So what are they trying to do? Maybe they're waiting to surrender. Maybe they are. Maybe they aren't. Is that a risk that we can take? At that point, I was like, yeah, we can take that risk because if they do draw, we can shoot first. We've got standoff. We've got heavier weapons. I can put a missile into them without difficulty. But at what point, my gas is going to run out. I'm going to have to leave here pretty soon. So do I leave these guys in the hole or what? And it was a real discussion going on between me and Gash in the cockpit and then the guys in the other cockpits as we're talking. We're like, this is the first morning, by the way. So we had done the shoot that last night. The bird almost landed on my helicopter. We slept under the aircraft, get up the next morning, scramble, and we get up and we're starting to support the ground troops as they're making contact. So we're pushing ahead of the ground troops and we're finding the Iraqis that are ahead of them. And so this discussion goes on for, I don't know, probably 20, 30 minutes as we're trying to figure this out. And then just this gust of wind comes and it blows up a mat that had been covering a AAA piece in the back corner of that fighting hole. And we're like, all right, game's up. And so we put a missile into that AAA piece, into that. It was a ZPU. Yeah, I think it was a ZPU 4. So a 14.5 millimeter AAA gun, optically guided. If they got on that, they could cut us in half.
Sure.
So we put a missile into that and probably killed everybody in the hole. That was just that was kind of that first time where we go, what is this about? Like, am I just going forward and killing everybody that I find? And literally that's my job. That was what I was supposed to do. If they weren't actively surrendering, and it takes, I put myself in their shoes. If I was that guy in that hole, would I be the one going, hey, let me wave this flag so that you don't shoot me, knowing that if there's anybody around me who doesn't think that's the right move, they're going to kill me.
Right.
This wasn't a military that was like, okay, now you get an admin shit for surrendering. No, you just get summarily executed. So it's like these guys are in I put myself in their shoes, which probably shouldn't have done, but I wasn't prepped to cut off that empathy yet. I hadn't cut that empathy off. I hadn't been able to dehumanize them. They were still humans to me. And I saw them 13 times magnification. I saw them humans. Right. So this guy had bedhead. I'm like, fuck, man. This guy's bedhead looks just like my other buddy. When he gets bedhead, his shit sticks up like that. And so that added another layer of challenge for me. And it brought, that's when that statement, no, we just kill people.
Right.
So easily given came back and go, this is what that means. This is what I signed up to do. To kill those guys in that hole, even though I don't know if they really deserve it. I want them to deserve it, but I don't get that choice. I'm a tool. I'm a tool to be used, and that is my job. I've been given orders. The orders are legal and clear. Carry them out. If you don't like it, deal with it later. And so it was like, shit. That's what I'm doing now. And it got easier. It got easier for a couple of reasons. One was that Gash and I had a discussion on some of those holes. There would be one guy like waving a flag on this side of the hole, and then 50 feet away, there's another guy with an AK still shooting at us. I've got precision weapons, but if I start firing at a position, everybody out there is likely to die, especially if the 20 millimeter is working, because it's a big wide beaten zone. It's not a sniper rifle. it sends them out wide. It got to the point where the Gash and I had this discussion, a heated discussion, after one of our missions where I didn't shoot and he thought I should have. And it came to a head because one of the follow-on units, one of the ground units, went through that area an hour or two after we did, and so did and another division of Cobras was there covering them. This Cobras got the shit shot out of them, and one of the Marines on the ground got killed. And so we had to go, shit, were these some of the guys that I didn't shoot at? Who took this guy out? Who almost took out our other squadron mates? I don't know. But that's not my choice to make. I have a job to do. I have to, and this was, Gash was making me understand that, making me see that. It's like, we don't get that choice. Our job is to go forward and to kill any enemy in our sectors and to clear the space for the ground units to come up behind us, period. And he was right. And that set the tone for the rest of our fighting, in that we executed our mission. It still was, that thought was still in my head, that recognition that, man, if there was a ground unit here, that fucker would put a white flag up right away and he would just be surrendering. But he doesn't have that option, and I can't give him that option, so I have to kill him. And it was that over and over and over again for, that period. So that was what I would come to understand as the biggest challenge biggest thing that I needed to unpack and to understand after the fact. I didn't do it at the time. Didn't even recognize really how that was building up on me. Right. Second tour comes, and that thought wasn't even there because the war had ended, and now we were in the insurgency. And so the enemy that we were fighting in the insurgency, I had in my mind, every single one of them chose to be there. They chose to pick up those weapons and to fight against the coalition forces. So that made them much more legit in my eyes. And so I felt very little issue with killing them. That's clear. These are enemy. They chose to be my enemy. Okay, this is now the game. The rules are set. Everybody's playing because they want to play. And so if they win, they win. If they lose, they lose. But that's the game. I'm okay with that.
Dan, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you now come back home and unwrap all that?
You don't really I didn't, at least. I didn't come home and go, 2 combat tours done. I'm looking on to get out of the Marine Corps now and to go do something else. And, let me take a moment to unpack these emotions, these reactions, because I know I've been through something. I know I've been through something big that I've been wanting to do since I was a kid, because I saw my dad had been through something similar and became the man that I know afterwards. Okay, I didn't have that perspective on my experiences yet. I had, 2 tours down, got all my pieces and parts, didn't get shot. I'm healthy, I'm whole. Let's move on. Nothing to look at. 2 good combat tours. Let's go forward. On to the next thing. And that was my entire mindset. And regardless of some of the idiosyncrasies that were present in my life, emotional, physical, things that were different, that I was just like, I can glide over that. This isn't an issue. This is just a hiccup, or I don't know, that's weird. Let me just push past it. Those were manifestations of this continued compartmentalization that I didn't recognize was actually a critical threat to me and to my health and safety. Because in the moment, you compartmentalize. You put all those thoughts, everything I just described about not wanting to kill those guys in the hole because they look like a buddy and do they really deserve to be here? That wasn't going on in my head. That wasn't going on in the forefront of my mind, in my conscious. That was in the background. And it was constantly, anytime those things would come forward, it was like, no, go away, shove them down. I got better and better at compartmentalizing and pushing things away, pushing those emotions and thoughts away, deal with it later, push it away. It's bothering me now. So it's a threat. Anything that's a threat that's going to distract me from my job gets pushed away. That's an incredibly valuable skill to have. We have it. We have to have it in law enforcement, because you've got to be able to look past the dead kid and find somebody that you can still save, get them saved, and then go deal with whatever else you need to deal with. You have to be able to compartmentalize. You have to be able to move past those things. But compartmentalization is like putting on a tourniquet.
Sure.
It saves you from bleeding out, but you don't leave it on for any longer than you have to. At some point, you got to take that thing off, or you're going to lose the arm. You're going to lose the leg. So compartmentalization is only half the battle. I didn't know that. And whether anybody had told me that, and if I could have understood that before the fact, I don't know. But when I came home from my first and second tours in Iraq, my tourniquets of compartmentalization were tightened down. I had everything locked, and it was like nothing was getting through. And I didn't recognize what that was doing to me. But what I would come to learn is that over time, those emotions and reactions that were generated in the heat of the moment, in battle, in the heightened awareness of the kind of the hyper alertness that occurs, you're remembering all those events, all those emotions, everything stacked together, but you're not letting it out, and it doesn't have anywhere to go. So you compartmentalize it, you stuff it down, you prevent it from coming into your conscious actions and mind, but it's still there in the subconscious, and it stays there. And it doesn't, the intensity of those emotions don't dissipate over time. They remain, what I found, I guess I wrote After Action about 6 years after coming home from OIF-1. The emotions that I've uncovered through the writing process were just as red hot when they came out 6 years later as they were at that time. They didn't dissipate. They'd actually gotten more intense, and it's kind of like having, I kind of use the analogy to a toxic waste dump. So I had taken all those emotions, put them in 55-gallon drums, and stuffed them in the back of this cave in my subconscious, and told them to sit there and stay. And for a while, it worked. They were compartmentalized. They were separated from my day-to-day. But I couldn't do that forever. And when I mentioned before, I had these kind of emotional idiosyncrasies. Things would come out. I didn't know where they came from. So I think one of the examples I used was like watching TV, just sitting there, and some commercial would come on. It's like those commercials where some guy buys his wife like a Lexus for Christmas, and she like opens the curtains, and there's a Lexus with a bow. And she's like, "Oh my God, I'm so happy." And it's all crap. I would see that. I would see the happiness in that actress's eyes, and it would be crying on the couch. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with me? So I'd have to hide that, wipe. Like, okay, I don't know what that was about, but this was weird. That was what I came to understand, is that was those emotions that I'd stuffed away, leaking out. Anytime I tried to let a little bit of an emotion out, I would get, so you're trying to pour an ounce of happiness out, and I would get 16 ounces of anger that would come out instead. And like, whoa, where's this coming from? It was like I couldn't trust my own emotions to be appropriate and measured to my day-to-day reality, because they weren't coming from my day-to-day reality. They were coming from 6 years prior. And when they wanted out, I think the analogy I use is that of a kennel of dogs. Kennel of dogs can sit there quietly. Then one dog barks, the rest of them are going to go off. Everybody's going to start barking. That was what my emotions would do. One little chihuahua would yap about something, and then every other dog in my emotional kennel would start going off, and I had to shut them all up. I couldn't say, okay, you can bark, but you guys can't. I had to shut them all down. And so to prevent that uncomfortable feeling of crying on the couch to some stupid TV commercial, to prevent that from happening, I had to double down on compartmentalization. I had to tighten it down even further. I had to turn that around on me and say, what's wrong with you that you're so weak that you're acting like this? What's so wrong with you that you're acting like this? You better hide it or everyone's going to think you're a pussy. Everybody's going to know you're weak. So you either hide it or just give up. Give up this person you think you are, because you're not. If you can't handle what you've been through, which 2 good combat tours, came home with all your pieces and parts, why are you having issues? Why are you having trouble with this? Something's wrong with you. That's that internal voice that made me go, yeah, damn right there's something wrong, and I'm not going to let anybody see it. I'm going to lock it down, and it's never going to come out again. And that was what was all going on before I started writing, before I hit that moment that started me looking at this in a different light. That's what brought me up to the turning point.
Before you started your healing process.
Yeah. And that came out when, after my son was born. And we were sitting in he was about 18 months old at this point. And my wife and I she'd been able to help me out through some of the stuff that I'd been dealing with, but I hadn't gone full bore, hadn't been really open and honest with myself and been like, yeah, I'm going to figure this out. It was always like, yeah, no, things are fine. Yeah, okay, I'm different than I was, but I wanted that difference. I wanted to become something different. So I'm okay with where I'm at. And she was wise enough to know that pushing me on that was not going to bear fruit. But she just, okay, well, she was more in a goalkeeper position, keeping me from doing anything really stupid, but okay. not making me see the uncomfortable truths that I didn't want to see in myself yet. So we're standing there in the kitchen one morning, and actually, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. So we're in that same house. This is a couple days prior, and I get a call out of the blue from Tom Dolan, who was my boss at the det.
Okay.
He was now, this is years later, a couple years later, and he's now the commanding officer of the Vipers, HMLA 169. My brother is flying with Tom. He's one of Tom's pilots in Afghanistan. And so I get a call like 9 a.m. in Virginia. Pick it up. Like, hey, what's going on? It's Hobbit. Like, hey, Hobbit, what's up? And he's like, hey, Dave's had a crash. He's going to be okay. I'm sorry. That's the second phone call. I get a call from my dad first. My dad calls, and he's like, I got a call from Hobbit. Dave's been in a crash. He's fine. He's in the hospital, but he's okay. And everything that, like all those emotions that I'd been able to keep down and keep hidden, all came out at once. And it was, I tried to feel relief that he was okay, but I couldn't. It was overwhelming grief that hit me instead, as if he were dead. And I like literally collapsed on the floor, or in the midst of we had these 2 pit bull mutts that were great. But I sat on the floor just sobbing. There's that silent sob, your mouth is open, drool's dripping out. Nothing's pretty. This isn't like TV stuff. This is ugly anguish just pouring out of me in a way that I had never experienced before. And I was just overwhelmed. And that wave just crashed and crashed and crashed. And then it got a little bit lighter. I could hear the phone again. I was sitting there. The dog was pressing against my chest. I'm like, okay, all right, I'm here. Dave's alive. You know, consciously being able to kind of gather things back up again, and finish that conversation with my dad. And then Hobbit called a little bit later. He told me exactly what happened, where Dave was, you know, his injuries. So, okay. And I started rebuilding those walls. You know, all my walls had collapsed in that moment. So I started rebuilding. I was like, okay, Dave's fine. Everything's good. Okay, we can push forward, move past this. But I couldn't ignore that I couldn't ignore that first reaction, that moment where it just overwhelmed me. And I knew at that time that all of my self-serving thoughts and statements about how I'm okay were lies.
Right.
That moment showed me I wasn't okay. And I had a choice to make. I either rebuild those walls and try and build them bigger, stronger, so they don't come out again, or I turn around and face them. Face those things that escaped. Find out where they came from. I don't know, I wasn't ready to do that. I started building the walls again. And then let's go to that next thing that I started with. We're in the kitchen that morning and sitting there with coffee in one hand, hanging out, leaning against the door jamb, and my 18-month-old son is there opposite me, standing there in his little footy pajamas, leaning against the door jamb with his little pet monkey Steve. Like I have my coffee cup, he's got his Steve, and he's just sitting there, thumb in his mouth, looking at me. And he's my mirror image. He's doing exactly what I'm doing. I'm looking down at him, and I'm like, kind of eyes meet. And then just in that moment, he's just like, in his eyes, I just see it. He's like, look, Dad, I'm just like you. I'm just like you. I was like, that was the moment. That little moment was when I realized that all my self-serving lies about I'm strong enough to ignore this. I'm strong enough to deal with this. I'm strong enough to ignore this, not deal with it. I can take this and ignore it for the rest of my life because the only person I'm hurting is me. That's when that lie came clear to me. Right. That's when it changed in my mind from being a signal of strength, an indicator of strength that I can do this and not deal with it afterwards. I'm fine. I'm strong enough to deal with this. That's when that became not an indicator of strength, but an indicator of cowardice. I was afraid to look at that, to look at what had come home with me from the desert. I was afraid to go into those toxic waste dumps in my mind. And if I honored that fear, I was going to hurt him because he was going to see how I operate and how I interact in the world. And he's going to think that's normal. Right. And then he's going to mirror that. And he's going to act that way. He's going to model my cowardice, my inability to deal with what I've been through, my unwillingness to deal with what I've been through is now going to have a negative impact on him. And that's when I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And that started me on the, kind of, it's a discovery journey. It's a journey of discovery, of figuring out what I had been through and how it had affected me. That led me to write these books. And that.
Now, Dan, I want to jump a little bit ahead in that, at some point you end up writing these books, but you also in your journey, as you reflect on your journey, you end up helping a lot of people. As I read the Continuing Action book, it talks a little bit about, this buddy system for first aid, mental first aid.
Right.
And I think, what you're talking about right now bridges into that where, in a little bit of a more simplistic terms, you're able to relate to readers this mentality of you're not alone and you need to seek help. You need to put down those walls. Stop building those walls. Look in the mirror and get the help that you need. But you broke it down to 3 different levels. So I want to kind of touch up a little bit on that because, I want the listeners to benefit from that part of the conversation.
Sure. So we get a lot of training. Everybody gets training in physical injuries and dealing with physical injuries. And in the Marine Corps, you have our docs, our corpsmen, or medics are called corpsmen.
Right.
And so there are 3 different levels of treatment for physical injuries. So there's self-aide. That's like you sprain your wrist, go ahead and wrap it up with an ace bandage, keep going. And then there's buddy aid. You get shot through your calf. Your buddy can put a pressure bandage on it, and then you're going to be able to move and get to where you need to go. And then there's corpsman aid. You get shot in the chest. You got a sucking chest wound. Okay, buddy might be able to do a little bit, but you really need the corpsman there to help you out. So there's certain things that you just know if you've got a bone sticking out and the corpsman's sitting right there, hey doc, help me fix this. And doc's on it. Corpsman's going to be right there doing it. If you don't have that, but your buddy can help you out, then your buddy is going to be there. He or she is trained to help you and knows how to do it. So boom, buddy aid. And then if nobody's there to help you, or if it's a splinter, self-aid, take it out yourself. Okay. Now I don't want to say that splinters aren't dangerous, because they can fester. You can lose that finger. Okay. So self-aid is important, and it's the small things that you do in order to keep yourself able to do your job. So if you end up having to have a finger amputated because your finger went septic because you didn't take care of this splinter, you're no longer good for the team. Now you have to be evacuated. You have to be taken out. Okay. So let's take care of things at the lowest possible level. And then you're okay. Now, that same sequence or that same kind of level of treatment exists for mental health. Mental health is not an all or nothing, you either have it or you don't type thing. It's a spectrum. You can be anywhere on that spectrum, from everything's great to everything's horrible. And many of us are somewhere on that spectrum throughout at any different time during the day. We're going to be at different points on that. So what I'm getting at here is that there are things you can do to help yourself mentally. There are things that you can do that your buddies can help you with mentally. And then there are times when your mental situation demands corpsman assistance. You need a professional to come and help you out. Okay? But you shouldn't wait until that splinter that you could have pulled out yourself goes septic and now runs the risk of losing your whole arm or maybe even your life, that you get that professional there to help you out. Okay? So your self-aid for your mental health is the critical first component that must be in place before buddy aid can help, and really before corpsman aid can help from a mental standpoint. Because if you're a mental wreck and you have no self-aid concepts, nobody's going to be able to help you out.
Right.
A professional can sit there across the table from you all day long and talk to you. But if you can't internalize that and realize that your decisions have real impacts on your life and your mental health, they're not going to be able to help you. So what I get at in continuing actions is that there are certain things that you have to do to help yourself out. Okay. Sleep hygiene's a big thing. Sleeping well,
right.
Something that we completely ignored. And the old adage, I'll sleep when I'm dead. That was always what would come through. And the more you push through your exhaustion, the better you were viewed. That guy's been up for 3 days and he's still doing this. Yeah, but he's a zombie and it comes at a cost. The basic concept of the necessity for sleep in your life, the use of alcohol. Alcohol destroys sleep.
Right.
It wrecks it. And it doesn't take a lot to wreck it either. That's one of those things that, is coming to me later in life. I recognize it a little bit more. But it's like, man, I value getting a good night's sleep more than I value having a couple of drinks the night before. And that once you make that shift, you recognize what it does for you. Eating right, exercising, all those things, that's all your self-aid. Having healthy outlets, healthy activities, things that you like to do. For me, it was spearfishing. It was, I have always been physical. I've always worked out a lot, but just running, just lifting, that wasn't enough to do what I needed to help me come down off the high of combat. I needed something more, something that would engage my mind and my body at the same time. And I found that through spearfishing. And it was kind of that, the challenge was there, the challenge of keeping my breath or being able to hold my breath for periods, not letting my heart rate get off track, and because that would kill my bottom time. Being able to go diving in crappy conditions, and when the visibility was only so good, there's big things out there swimming around too. And it was at that point I needed that tingle of danger to make me feel, not that it made me feel right, but it made me feel like my heightened alertness, the heightened alert state that I was at as my baseline, was appropriate in the water. It was inappropriate sitting at home on my couch.
Sure.
It was inappropriate talking to my neighbors. It was inappropriate driving on the 5. But underwater, 40 feet underwater in the kelp, when I can only see 10 feet in any direction, it's appropriate to be, okay, if something comes out of me from this direction, what am I going to do? And having those plans and being able to put myself into, and more importantly, take myself out of those periods and those places, those situations where heightened alertness are required and are beneficial. By taking myself out of it, that started my parasympathetic nerve system, gets everything to kind of calm down.
Right.
That's what started that process for me, because it was stuck on. It was on when I came back from combat. And it was like, I didn't want it to turn off because it was what was keeping me safe. Now I could step that down. And at first it was only an hour after I got out of the water that I would feel kind of calm and collected. And then everything would come back in, be like, okay, I'm back on. Over time, that respite period grew longer and longer. And so it wasn't an all or nothing. It was something that got better with time. The more I did it, the longer I felt good afterwards, the longer I felt calm afterwards. So that was a big component of my self-aide. Buddy aid for me came from some other friends of mine, some guys that I'd been through my combat tours with. One in particular, Steve, that we would go on these long runs.
Okay.
Through this area in Great Falls, Virginia. And it would just be, literally, it would be like a couple hours of just me and Steve running and talking. Conversations like this, like going through, figuring things out. And it was never like an overt thing. It was like, hey man, I need to talk to you today. It was just, hey, let's go for a run. Right. It's like, cool, let's go. And then as we ran, we would talk. And it was like that intermix of support and activity was critical. I couldn't have one without the other. I mean, I could go for a run by myself, but it didn't have the same effect as spending that time and having those conversations. And if we had instead had those conversations over beers, wouldn't have had the same effect.
Not the same benefit.
No. Because the beers are they're a get out of jail free card.
They mask the emotions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they're also the next day you can go, man, I was so messed up yesterday. I think I said some crazy crap. Sorry, dude. And you've just removed everything that you might have gained from actually opening up and actually having that discussion. So for me, that was self-aid. I'm sorry, that was the buddy aid component. There are tons of really valuable nonprofits out there that form the vast majority of this buddy aid framework. So, like, there are groups that'll take you fly fishing.
Right.
You go fly fishing for a week up in Montana. Maybe you open up to the guy when you're fly fishing with the guide. because the guide is there because he's a combat veteran who knows what that does for you. He's just going to be there quiet. And then when you're ready to open up, if you want, he knows where you're coming from. It's those moments of honesty in the midst of like the natural world, natural beauty. Those are breakthrough moments. Those are times when you could really gain some perspective on yourself and your journey. And there are a lot of nonprofits that offer that. Buddy Aid also expands out to, like for me, like the guys you served with, the people you were with. That's an incredibly valuable thing. If they've also done this work themselves.
Right.
They have to have the self-aid in place for the buddy aid to be supportive. And you have to be able to recognize, man, I loved that guy in combat. He was the best, but he's a shit show now. And I can't save him until my stuff is set. I've got to get myself stable. Self-aid, buddy aid, maybe corpsman aid. I got to get all that stuff set so that my foundation is strong enough to pull him on board with me and to let him know, hey, this is what might work for you. This is what I'm seeing. You have to look for those moments where he or she is receptive to seeing just how dangerous their positioning is. Once they have that moment and they have that breakthrough, now you can support them in a way of, okay, this is what I did. This is something that I tried. This worked. This didn't work. This group helped me. This group might help you. Why don't we go to this meeting together? Hey, do you want to go rafting? Hey, there's a group that does this rafting tip. Let's go check this out. Whatever it is, that's where buddy aid really becomes a force multiplier. Because when you're in a tight unit, you know each other. You know each other well. And you can build off each other's strengths as long as you don't fall into the trap of building off of each other's weaknesses. Of being like, okay, the only thing that we do is we go and we get drunk on Friday nights.
Right.
And it feels great in the moment, but it's set both of us back in ways that we can't even comprehend yet. That's something that I've kind of realized after the fact, was that a lot of the folks who are the loudest in this environment, in this ecosystem of veterans' mental health and of mental health itself, you need to look at them and make sure that they've done the work themselves before kind of listening to the suggestions. And I say that not in a damning way, but I've had too many friends who have been my most vocal supporters. Like, you've got to do, you've figured it out. You helped me out so much. Thanks. I'm going to go help these guys now. And they turn around and they start helping somebody else before they've got themselves stable, before they have their own self and buddy aid in position. And these guys, I've got friends who've done that, who've been that guy, who've killed themselves. And you can't help somebody else until you are stable and set. Okay. And I want to make that clear, is that it's truly, we want to help others. We want to be that guy that pulls somebody out of the fire, that drags our buddy out of the line of fire, whatever it is. That's where we are comfortable sacrificing. We are not comfortable spending time on ourselves and in making our own, in getting our own house in order. We are far more comfortable rushing into danger to save somebody else than we are to sit in our own room and to go through the internal work, the inside work that you have to do to make sense of these sorts of experiences, to gain the perspective on your experiences and understand how they've impacted you. That takes work. It takes dedication. It takes time, and it takes effort directed inward at yourself. We're not good at that. So that's one of the key things I'd like folks to take away from this. But kind of got off track there. The third level that we were looking at is the corpsman aid. And that's when you need some professional help. And it's not that everything else failed. It's not that your self-aid failed and your buddy aid failed. It's just that sometimes you need a professional to talk to you. Yeah. Sometimes you need that. And honestly, after doing all my work on these books, spending all that time in my own head and figuring things out, I gained a lot of perspective on where I'd been and what I've been through. It still wasn't enough. I went and I talked to the VA counselor at the vet center here in San Marcos, and I wasn't a typical patient for him because I kind of walked in there with all that work and threw it on his desk and said, "Hey man, help me figure this out," as opposed to I think his normal guy who comes in and goes, I don't need to talk to you. I went in there the opposite spectrum, and the benefit that I gained from that interaction with him was rapid and profound, because I just needed a little bit of help shifting the perspective just a smidge, because I was still stuck in a loop that was working against me, and I didn't understand it. I couldn't see it until he pointed it out. I was like, oh, well, shit. Okay. Makes sense. And so buddy aid or self-aid, buddy aid, corpsman aid. I had self and buddy all set. I still needed a little nudge on the corpsman side, and he was there, and it helped out.
Well, we just got to be able to recognize where we're at, and don't be embarrassed. Don't feel less than to reach out, because there's others that have been there. We got to put our egos aside sometimes.
It's the most critical and hardest first step, I think.
I couldn't agree with you more. Now, Dan, incredible story. I'm going to have to bring you back so we can talk about, what are you going to do with all this knowledge? Because, hey, you know what? This is a lifelong process, right? I mean, even if, you still need buddy aid, you still need self-aid, you need to do that positive talking to yourself, just as self-aid sometimes to get through a day. And with all your experiences, that's why at the very beginning I said that you are an invaluable resource to law enforcement. And I'm happy to say that you're here in San Diego County. So I'm looking forward to you somehow, somewhere working with others that are already doing some of the groundwork here in San Diego County and bringing them to a different level. I want to thank you for being here. I appreciate you. And please come back, because we got more to talk about when it comes to law enforcement and mental health.
Sounds good. Well, I look forward to it. Thanks again for having me. This was great.
Appreciate you. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you watching. Please leave comments. Let us know what else you want to hear. What other type of stories you want to hear. Please subscribe. Tell somebody else what we're doing. We're going to finish off with our brother in Christ, our brother in law enforcement, Greg Admonson, who's going to give a little prayer for everyone that's going out in the field tonight, everyone that's already in the field, and all first responders, military personnel that keep us free, so that everyone makes it home tonight. Thank you for watching. Appreciate you.
We come before you with gratitude for the brave men and women who have answered the sacred call to protect and serve. You said in Romans 13, verse 4, that the one in authority is God's servant for your good. Lord, we thank you for every officer who stands the line. We thank you for every officer who runs toward the sound of danger when others run away. We thank you, God, for every officer who brings order out of chaos and who seeks justice with compassion. Father, as warriors in a fallen world, we draw our strength from you. Your word declares in Psalm 144, verse 1, "Blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war, my fingers for every battle." Train our hands, Lord, not only for the battles of the street, but for the battles within. Give us courage when fear whispers. Give us patience when tempers rise. Grant us wisdom when decisions must be made in an instant. Lord, we ask for your divine protection over every officer in the field. Surround them with your angels as a shield, as you promised in Psalm 91. And let your peace guard their heart and mind in Christ Jesus. When they grow weary, remind them that those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. Almighty God, you are our strength. You are our shield. You are our ever-present help in times of trouble. Father, when the day's work is done, bring them home safely. Restore their spirit, renew their joy, and remind them that they do not fight this battle alone. For you go before them, you go beside them, you are with them. In the mighty name of Jesus Christ, our Commander and King, amen.